If you're watching football as hard as it deserves to be watched this season, you need California almonds. With 6 grams of energy-giving protein, you'll have the stamina for the happy jumps and the angry convulsing. Visit almonds.com and own every day of the season with California almonds.
Welcome in, Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Mike Golic Jr., Trey Wingo here with you. Let me just say this before we do anything else.
Yeah.
That was the greatest Big 12 championship game I've ever seen. That Monday night game was the greatest Big 12 championship game in the history of Big 12 championship games.
Certainly got a guy that's familiar with it in Patty Mahomes.
Man, yeah, that's true. That was just another Saturday afternoon for him from Texas Tech. Listen, it was entertaining. It was everything everybody built it up to be, yet I hope the NFL doesn't turn into this. I mean,
I have bad news for you.
Not this.
You may want to sit down.
I mean, there's high scoring, and then there's this. This even exceeded. I think it even exceeded what we thought it was going to be.
Oh, it definitely
from a scoring standpoint. Now,
considering it had never happened before,
yeah,
yeah.
You did have some big defensive plays, but I'll be honest. I don't want the NFL to turn into this, and I don't think it's going to be this because here you had 2 of the 3 highest scoring teams going against one another, and we'll see if they match up again in the Super Bowl. The Saints may have something to say about that. By the way, the Saints are actually the leaders in the NFL in points per game. Not either one of these teams even after last night,
but they're catching up.
They are. It was. I get it. It was entertaining to watch, but as I said, I could not deal with this on a consistent basis.
Again,
I just couldn't.
I have bad news for you.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we won't get to deal with this on a consistent basis. Let's put it that way, because the more you sit around with what happened last night, like you're right, at an entertainment model level, the thing that came to mind immediately was the Scott Hansen in the NFL Red Zone when he just came back after one break and just looks at the camera and goes, "Man, football." Like that was last night.
Yeah.
There were so many big plays packed one after another. You couldn't keep up with it, but it is trying to figure out now this morning in the aftermath, what do we take from this as far as what is going to be part of the future? Because I think there's so much that goes into it. You won't have to worry about seeing this every week.
Yeah, and that's a great analogy because if you think about it, that one game was like watching 3 hours of the red zone where you just saw touchdowns.
Yeah.
And that was in one game.
It was the touchdown montage.
This was the touchdown montage at the end of the NFL Red Zone broadcast every week. The Chiefs-Rams game, clearly what everybody's talking about, brought to you by Lowe's. Pros in the know, start with Lowe's. Go to lowesforpros.com. So before we dive into the analysis
right.
why this happened, or what, let's just go through the list of things that happened last night, okay? Let's start with this. 105 points. 3rd most points ever in a game. By the way, highest scoring game ever in Monday Night Football history. These 2 teams accounted for 14 touchdowns. On the season, the Bills, as a team, have a grand total of 13 touchdowns.
Wow, that is amazing.
This is where we are, okay? Patrick Mahomes, 6 touchdown passes. But Jared Goff, 4 touchdown passes, and ran one in, so he accounted for 5. And then Samson Ekubom.
Ebenezer. You got Ebenezer out of that.
Ekubom, former Dallas Cowboy.
Right.
I thought that was just you trying to make it the old thing.
Good pull there.
Thank
Put
you.
the name. I'm with you.
Good pull for no reason whatsoever.
Well, yeah.
Let's be
You
clear
saved
about
yourself
that.
pretty quickly.
Thank you. Well, way to save it. Samson Ekubom had 2 touchdowns, and I think the Rams defense had more fantasy points than Todd Gurley.
The Rams defense had 21 fantasy points, and Todd Gurley had 12.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't see that one coming. By the way, the highest, you may be wondering, because I always don't like get left hanging with that.
Right.
The 3rd highest scoring game of all time. 2nd was 2004, Bengals and Browns, 58-48. And 1st, 1966, Redskins 72, Giants 41.
Yep. Homer Jones went nuts in that game for the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this one is just going to load up on all the stats, but it does bring up so many ancillary questions about the NFL going forward. Not the NFL as a whole.
No.
But the top of the NFL of where teams are going to be and what's going to be needed to stop this. A lot to talk about. But, in talking about the game itself, we do talk about Pat Mahomes and 6 touchdowns, but 5 turnovers. 3 interceptions, a couple late. lost 2 fumbles on getting sacked. Aaron Donald had, a couple of sacks and 4 fumbles, something he hadn't. He leads the league in sacks with 14.5, but those were his first forced fumbles last night. So the defense did come up with a couple of plays on both sides, but for the most part, this was just an absolute shootout.
I think that's the thing I took away first and foremost when you're trying to find things that are evident of what football is going to be. It is with the way the rules are set up, because we know that's been a different part of this season. You've got to be Khalil Mack and Aaron Donald. You've got to be a defense that forces splash plays like that give the ball back to your offense and create havoc, because doing it consistently, being a consistently great defense, holding people, that to me feels antiquated now.
It does. It does. And on a separate level, we'll get to that. It does make what the Saints were able to do the last 2 weeks kind of impressive, holding those 2 teams to 7 and 14 points, the Eagles and Bengals respectively. But let's just sort of go through the layers of what we saw. And I think afterwards, Sean McVay may have summed it up for all of us. Here's the Rams head coach.
Yeah, it was a whirlwind. I feel like I might need a couple beverages to relax tonight, but. It was great. This is what you love so much about this game, and really what's the best part about it is that locker room, sharing that with the people that you love, the players, the coaches, this organization. But it was a great matchup, but it was just one game, and there's a lot of football left. We got to do a great job making sure that we respond. We get ourselves healthy as possible, and we're refreshed and ready to go when we play the Lions coming back from the bye.
And you wondered where this game was going early,
right?
Because the Rams jumped out to a 13-0 lead in the first quarter. This all-star officiating crew wanted to get noticed, it seemed, because they threw every flag in the world on the Chiefs in the first quarter. The Chiefs in the first quarter and 1 minute into the second quarter were about to get ready to get called for their 8th flag, until, correctly so, Andy Reid challenges an interference in the end zone where the ball got tipped, where, oh, by the way, Jared Goff got a little too close to him on the sideline, and Andy Reid just cussed out Jared Goff. You want to talk about, Andy Reid is one of the most happy-go-lucky guys around, but he had to be so frustrated at that point for all the penalties that had been called on Kansas City. They got that one wrong, and he had to lose his mind to get his flag out to challenge that one. And all of a sudden you see Goff showing up toward the sidelines by the refs, by Andy Reid, and Andy Reid just kind of lit into him. I'm sure, obviously, it was the emotion of the moment, but I was like, wow, Andy is hot.
Jared Goff looked like a kid the first time he sees his parents fighting. This doesn't concern you, boy. Just walked over. He turned around, and you saw on the camera, he looked visibly shaken. Because how many of us see Andy Reid like that?
Reid
You're the one that draws it out.
But I don't blame him. I mean, 7 penalties against his Chief team in the first quarter. They ended up with, 13, I think, for the game, 13. For like 135 yards. I mean, it was ridiculous, but every other play there was a flag in that first quarter.
Well, it is, and the funny thing about Andy Reid, Louis Riddick once told me a story, which I will not reveal the player's name, but he said he had his office when he was in Philadelphia right next to Andy's, and he said only one time did he ever hear Andy curse, and it was when this certain player came in and he was like, oh my God, that's Andy Reid saying those things.
It matters more then.
Exactly. So when you see that sort of thing from Andy Reid, it does sort of jolt you. Okay, so let's do layers on this. First and foremost, on the winning side of the Rams, what was most impressive to you? The way Goff ran the offense really without it going through Todd Gurley, or the fact that the defense was able to make the plays to keep Mahomes and company in check?
I mean, both those, but I think the most surprising thing had to be the fact that they ran this offense and Todd Gurley wasn't a huge part of it. I mean, he is going to be battling Drew Brees and for MVP, or at least he was going into this game. He and a couple other players out there, Mahomes being one of them as well. But Todd Gurley, I mean, I was somewhat stunned at Gurley in this game not being the monster part of it that he normally was. Neither team rushed for over 100 yards in this game. Gurley, 12 carries for 55 yards. He had 3 catches as well, but not the Todd Gurley we had come to see be a huge part of this offense. So I think to put up that many points without a monstrous Todd Gurley game was probably the most surprising thing of the night to me.
Do we think he's hurt? Do we think Todd Gurley? Do we think
there was a series in the second and third quarter where he was not on the field for a long period of time?
That was the one thing that made me think maybe he's not completely healthy, because we see backs get spelled all the time, but for that amount of time in the game, and the way he was used more in the extended passing game around the line of scrimmage. We saw some screens for him in the second half. I question whether he's fully healthy, but you're right. It was a game that they didn't have to, and part of that could be game plan specific too. I mean, with a pass defense as bad as we saw for both of these teams, I don't know why I'd feel compelled to run it either. Like, you're up 14 points already without the benefit of having to rush at all, so it didn't feel necessary in certain points.
To your point, it was his lowest amount of touches this season.
Right.
12 rushing attempts, 3 receptions. Now, the game before against Seattle, he had 16 attempts and 3 receptions, so he had 19. 15 in this game, 19 touches. He had 19 touches a game before that. So a few less than what he'd had before.
But that's a brilliant point by you, just so you know. I'm appreciating it.
I don't even know what it is.
Well, think about it. That was his fewest or second fewest touches?
Last night was the fewest.
Fewest touches, and he's an MVP candidate, and the Rams still put up 54.
Yeah.
Marinate on that for a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
I think he's pretty much their best player. No disrespect to Jared Goff. He's their best player, and he had his fewest touches. Yeah, we'll just put up 50.
Well, and I guess that's the thing, is you take stock of what mattered last night and what didn't. Like, we talked about all those Chiefs. The Chiefs, to me, are the scariest team in pro football.
Yes.
They may not be the best,
no,
but they are an absolute nightmare because they had 13 penalties for 1 billion yards last night, and it felt like they had 5 turnovers last night.
Yeah.
2 of them went directly for points,
right.
And they still lost this game by 3, and they still had the ball twice in their hands at the end of the game with a chance to win it, and it was the same thing we said coming off of New England. We always say this, you don't want to see this team. Truly, I would have a tough time picking against the Chiefs in any game because they are lightning in a bottle.
They really are. We'll get to the Chiefs side of a minute, but if you thought this game was confusing and crazy and just draining to watch, imagine playing it. Here's Jared Goff after the game with our countdown crew.
It was incredible. That was one of, if not the craziest game I've ever played in. They were scoring, we were scoring. You think it's whoever has the ball last, and then we get 2 turnovers at the end. It was an insane game. Even the first half, we both missed a PAT, just like little stuff like that. It was fun, but happy to be on top. But it could have gone either way. But it was a lot of fun.
That was the strangest thing, that this game was tied because both kickers, 2 of the better kickers in football, found a way to miss extra points, right? Is that the most kicking thing ever in the NFL these last couple of years?
Really
that these 2 guys couldn't make the easy ones?
Without question.
Yeah.
As far as quick numbers of this game, there were 56 first downs. There was 1,001 yard of total yards, and there were 95 passes in this game. We're going to get to a bunch of layers of this, and one of it is going to be who can beat these teams. But, again, this is the NFL. I mean, Minnesota lost to them 38-31. Seattle lost to the Rams 33-31. Green Bay lost to them 29-27. So I know we're going to go down this thought process of, oh, my God, who's going to stop these teams? But it's still the NFL. It's still not going to be all kind of monster high scores and they're going to run away with it because if you have a monster offense. Because Minnesota doesn't have a monster offense, but they still put up 31 points, losing by 7. Seattle doesn't have a monster offense. They lost by 2 to the Rams. So I think a lot of people are going to get carried away. I'm not going to be one of them. They're fun to watch and they're great offenses, but I'm not going to sit there and say, you know what, we have college now where these teams are like Alabama. We don't know who's going to stand up to them.
So I think the interesting thing is, and those points are all well served, but I disagree on Minnesota. I think on their best day, we talk about them as one of the best offenses in the league. I think they're flawed up front. I think there are certain things that don't change as foundational elements. Seattle's been better this year because their offensive line has been better. The Saints have one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines in football.
Yes,
we talked about the Rams in that same regard. That group looked a little more suspect than they have in the last couple of years, but they're healthy and they're consistent. The Chiefs have a better pair of tackles than most teams in the league can claim to. Green Bay can offer the same thing. So I'm with you. There are certain foundational elements that don't change. But what's interesting is this league and the CBA right now rewards passing and they reward young quarterbacks. Sure. And so when you see the teams last night, that's at least a blueprint that says, yeah, unless you've got a future Hall of Famer under center, young, talented, and good coordinator buys you more than having someone who's got the benefit of experience, unless they are Drew Brees or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers.
Well, and to that point about the offensive line, Mitchell Schwartz, the left tackle for the Chiefs.
Right tackle,
excuse me, 7,000 consecutive snaps last night. He's passing 7,000 consecutive snaps. So you're right. we say this every week, and people don't want to hear it because they like to see the Brandon Cooks and the Tyreek Hill and the Travis Kelce and the Todd Gurley and all that kind of stuff. Protection is everything in the NFL. One of the reasons the Colts are legitimate and Andrew Luck is playing on an MVP type level. He's not going to win it, but he's in the conversation because before last night, only Patrick Mahomes had thrown for more touchdown passes, and I think that's still the case because Goff only had 4. I mean, only had
4 touchdowns.
But it's because he hasn't been sacked in 5 yet. Hasn't been sacked in 5 games. That's the point. We all get enamored with the stuff because it's where our eyes go. But if you can't block and you can't protect, nothing matters.
So, do you not pay a defensive player big money anymore?
Oh, well, no, I know one team that wouldn't.
You pay key defensive players. Like, I don't think having a great defense matters anymore. I think having a great defensive player, I think having a game breaker does, because he can make the rest of your team. I mean, as great as we talk about the rest of the Bears defense, how different do they look when Khalil Mack was off the field?
Yeah. They do, but they say Hicks in the middle, your 2 linebackers, Eddie Jack, they still have 18 interceptions.
But how much did that buy you when Khalil Mack wasn't there forcing fumbles and making them spend? Because I think the interesting conversation that keeps coming up is interior, exterior guy.
Right.
Because with Aaron Donald last night, you can slide protection his way easier. You can throw 2 linemen his way. With a guy like Khalil Mack, you're wasting offensive skill capital in tight ends and running backs trying to have to chip and stop him. You're screwing up the rest of your offense in the name of stopping him. So I think that's a conversation to be had there. But I still think, I mean, what we saw from Chicago's defense when Khalil Mack was out, they struggled against teams. Like, didn't they lose to the Dolphins in that time period?
They lost to the Dolphins in that time period, and he did not play well because of his ankle against the Patriots. I think those are your 2 best defensive players, though, Aaron Donald and Khalil Mack. I mean, those 2 are separating themselves.
And good luck for the 3rd place on the podium. I mean, that's the way this is. But to your point again, what we're seeing from the Rams here, they scored 54 in a game not only in which Gurley had his fewest touches, but he had his streak of 13 straight games with a touchdown broken.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what impresses me most about this Ram. Remember, Cooper Kupp wasn't there. Okay? Cooper Kupp's gone for the year. Reynolds and Everett stepped up. There was a time when Brandon Cooks was off the field in this game. Yet somehow, some way, Sean McVay found a way to get the most out of this offense. And a guy who ran a pretty prolific offense for a lot of years during his Hall of Fame career, Steve Young, the pride of Putnam Hill, said these 2 quarterbacks are blowing him away.
I think it's just their confidence level, Scott. They haven't played that many big games. I mean, this is Pat Mahomes' first time through the league. And just the unflinching nature of how they looked at every situation that were biggest on the biggest stage kind of thing, almost, Super Bowl-like. And they just kept answering and answering. 3rd and 10, oh, yeah, let me throw the quick out route. Game's on the line, let me make the big throw. I got to say, it's watching from 10 feet away the whole game. It's like I found myself leaning in. Like, how do I get on the field? This is so much fun. It was fun to watch.
Whatever.
Turn your mic on. You
fun
are
to watch.
It's been a while.
Yeah, again, it's fun to watch one of these every now and then. I don't need this to be the norm. I don't think it'll be the norm. But
it won't be the norm. I think that's why it is fun to watch, because we recognize that these 2 offenses are special. So we saw them go out there and be special. We're not going to get to watch this because who else is going to be able to match all the things that it takes? Who else has the mastery of offense the way Sean McVay was to scheme open what are outside of they have a couple of very good receivers. They don't have a great one. Like, of the 3 teams we're talking about, Michael Thomas is unquestionably the best receiver, but Tyreek Hill is special on the other side. Patrick Mahomes is special on the other side. So you've got all these things that you can't recreate in other settings because they don't have the parts and they don't have the coaching that these teams have. So I think that's why last night was fun.
Look, last night
again, I admit was fun. But it's going to be the talk going forward when you hear some of our analysts say this is going to be the norm. This is now the NFL. I don't think I can go that far.
No, listen, as we said, the Chiefs were the first team ever in the 99 years we've been playing this damn game in the NFL to score 50 points and lose. So yes, this game as a singular entity is an outlier. But what we saw in this game is the future in every way, shape, and form. A couple of stats to back that up. Most total points through Week 11 in NFL history. 2018, the most, 7,791. More than 200 more than the previous record of 7,581 in 2013. Most total touchdowns through Week 11 in NFL history, 895. 51 more than the previous record set in 2013 when that was the year Peyton Manning threw 55 touchdown passes. So, yes, this game, 50-50, outlier. Points-a-palooza, It's coming,
that's
baby.
true.
And there's no way you can stop it. One last thing on that. The Patriots and the Saints right now are tied from 2007 Patriots and the 2018 Saints are tied at the exact same number of yards passing per game, 295.7. In 2007, that was first in the league. In 2018, the Saints are sixth.
Yeah.
This is the future in every way, shape, and form. Patrick Mahomes also might be the future, but there are some kinks to his game. By the way, Golic and Wingo presented by Progressive Insurance, making it easy to bundle your home and car insurance. So, Patrick Mahomes is on that short list, but have we seen a flaw in his game that may translate into a playoff game more than anything else we've seen so far? We'll get to that, Mike.
Support for the Golic and Wingo Show podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Let's talk about buying homes for a minute. Because of rising interest rates, there's a lot of unpredictability when it comes to buying a home these days. It's causing a whole lot of anxiety with folks. Well, our friends at Quicken Loans are doing something about it. They're calling it the power buying process, and here's how it works. Quicken Loans will verify your income, assets, and credit in less than 24 hours to give you a verified approval. This gives you the strength of a cash buyer. Then once you're verified, you qualify for their all-new exclusive Rate Shield approval. First, they lock your rate for up to 90 days while you shop. Now here's the best part. If rates go up, your rate stays the same. But if rates go down, your rate also drops. You win either way. It's the kind of thinking you'd expect from America's largest mortgage lender. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Golic. Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year purchase transactions. Additional conditions or exclusions may apply. Based on Quicken Loans data in comparison to public data record. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
Ewan Almonds versus where did I park my car? Right now you're wondering if your car was on B7 or G11, or maybe it rhymed with orange. And with all this honking, the car alarm trick's no use. But then, like an eagle spying its prey, you see the sensible sedan that you call lucky. Triumphantly, you pop your trunk just like you popped those almonds in your mouth. It's thanks to those 6 grams of energy-giving protein that you've mastered this maze. High five yourself, you've earned it. California Almonds. Own your everyday, every day.
All right, Golic and Wingo with you, ESPN Radio, ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Mike Golic, Mike Jr., Trey Wingo here with you. You had a question before the break last week. It was a really good one.
Yeah. First and foremost, so you got to check out it's everywhere.
Yeah.
The Andy Reid upset with the refs and Jared Goff walking over that way. Now, Andy doesn't cuss at him. You can read his lips. He's not a swearing guy. But he basically tells Goff, get back to the huddle. And I understand Andy Reid being mad at that point. His team had been penalized up and down the field, and he was about to challenge something he was right on. But man, it is something. Goff turned around and walked back to the huddle.
I like to imagine just in my own world that Andy Reid threw a boy back in there, like a condescending father talking to his son who had just come into an argument that he wasn't a part of and needed to show himself out, and he did. But the best part is the sly wink that the ref throws at Goff to kind of say, like, it's going to be all right, Dad. It's just a little upset.
He looked shook, man.
He was a little, your dad was a little upset, and he had every right to be upset. Okay, the question I asked before, right now in the NFL, we have 3 teams averaging over 30 points. New Orleans leads the way at 37, Kansas City at 36, and the Rams at 35. So I started looking back, and the last time we had 3 teams finish the season, remember the season's not over, but I have a feeling these 3 teams will hold it over 30, that we had a season finish where in the regular season where 3 teams finished over 30 points. 2011. Green Bay Packers led the way at 35, New Orleans 34, New England 32. And by the way, Detroit was at 29.6. So we were very close to 4 teams being over 30. I'm looking at the 4th place team this year, and it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, 29-9. The Indianapolis Colts.
I'm giving them 30, 29-9, round up.
Indianapolis Colts, 29-8. Chicago, 29-4. You have the potential for 3 more 6 teams possibly to be in the 30s.
Welcome to the future. That's the way this is going. Real quickly, I went back and looked at that Andy Reid thing last night, trying to read his lips. This is what I came up with. Dear Jared, I'm having a most important discussion with these fine gentlemen, making sure our rules of the game are upheld correctly. Would you please allow me the space to eloquently vent my frustrations at this moment? Thank you.
Sounds about right.
I mean, that's what I got.
Yeah.
That's what I got anyway. All right, and that is now
sounds like when they dub the English in over a kung fu movie.
Exactly. All right. By the way, it's time for Straight Talk now. Brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. And when we started the show, I was kidding and said, that was the greatest Big 12 title game I ever saw. No, really, here was my actual guttural reaction from the game last night.
Oh my God!
I mean, that really did sum it up more than anything else. But there is an interesting thing that we've seen a pattern of now when it comes to the Chiefs and specifically their first-year starter, Patrick Mahomes. Here was Patrick Mahomes after the game talking about, hey, you know what? This one is kind of on me.
I mean, every single game you leave plays out there where you think you can hit. But yeah, I mean, you said it. The turnovers it changed the game. I think I gave them 21 points pretty much through turnovers, and just kind of like I said at the New England game, you can't give good teams points turning the ball over. So that was pretty much the changing point of the game.
Now, look, I'm not going to pin this on completely on Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he threw for 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, he did.
Threw for 478 yards. Aaron Donald strip sacked him twice. This just in, Aaron Donald is not human. So, I mean, I get that part of it. I'm not going to. The one to the Samson Ekubom, he was actually being blocked pretty well by Mitchell Schwartz, and he just stuck his hand up there. It just happens sometimes. But the thing that I noticed, and I want to get your guys' take on this, this was the 4th primetime game we've seen out of Patrick Mahomes. The first was the Monday night game in Denver, then the game in New England, and then the very next week, the Sunday night game against the Bengals, and this Monday night game against the Rams. And I have noticed a pattern in all of these games, save for one, which was the home Monday night game, or Sunday night game, rather, against the Bengals, is that on these primetime stages, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs come out a little amped, right? They come out a little off. It was 2.5 quarters of the Broncos, that Monday night game, where he was held in check. They were held under their normal first half scoring points. We saw what happened in the first few drives against the Patriots, right? And we saw what happened in the flag fest and all the other stuff that happened in the first game, the first few series against the Rams. Are you guys at all concerned that this offense and this young quarterback gets a little too amped on this primetime stage?
No, because I think with each passing game and each time they're on primetime, of which there'll be more because of how good they are, I think that will become less and less a factor. I think it is his first year starting. It is his first time when he hits that big stage for this game or that big stage for that game. It is new to him, and I think eventually he settles in. So I think it only, quite honestly, can only get better for them as far as from the amped up standpoint than worse.
Yeah, if talking about amped up, you're talking about the beginning of the game where he erased a 13-point deficit with swiftness last night. The penalties and everything to start the game were defensively. The Chiefs' defense looked like they had no clue how to deal with. And give the Rams credit. They manipulate these snap count better than any team in pro football. With tempo, getting up to the line, going on quick sets, going on multiple cadences. They were able to do that better than anyone, and that produced the majority of the penalties. I thought that defense had the biggest adjustment there. I don't really worry about Patrick Mahomes just because, again, his game is just sort of predicated on this idea that they can score in 2 or 3 plays. That first drive that they finally got the touchdown on was bang, bang down the field in a way that only that team can do.
You're absolutely right, and I get what you're saying, but it's now been 4 times, and 3 out of those 4 times we've seen this become a thing for him early. No, he came off. He returned it. I mean, they were down 15 points at the half in New England, and he had the horrible interception right before the half. And they still needed a field goal at the end to beat him. I would just like to see him the next time out. Let's tamp it down.
I think that'll come. I mean, listen, Ebukon, that was a bad interception to him. That was a bad interception. It was like a guy's trying to dump the ball off, threw it right to him.
Well, it was the run pass option. Right, and it was, how do you defeat those as you get in the window's backside and understand where it is? And they did a good job of showing that on Monday night. Patrick Mahomes stood there, did not move his feet at all. It was a lazy play.
Oh, absolutely was.
The things that concerned me more with Patrick Mahomes last night were actual things like pocket presence, like you talk about, and I thought Joe Thomas, who's going to come up in a little bit, was one of the guys that I saw commented. But when you look at Jeff Schwartz and Joe Thomas and Ross Tucker on Twitter, that hive of offensive line guys, what they pointed out accurately was on a couple of those sacks, those were not plays where Aaron Donald was actually working Cam Irving over.
No,
they were plays where, quite frankly, in the pocket, you've got to be in a different spot. Like, those were plays where Patrick Mahomes wasn't where he needed to be in the pocket based on the rush. There were plays where he should have stepped up. There were plays where launch point you always hear on a pass. Yours, an offensive line, taught this is where the quarterback is going to be on this given play. This is where we've got to push guys. And there were spots where Patrick Mahomes needed to be in a different place to help his offensive line out against that kind of rush and didn't. And those are the things that come with maturity and reps. Correct. And the time that he's going to get this season.
Does this worry you guys at all now? He by far and away leads the league in touchdowns with 37. Next closest is Andrew Luck with 29. But one thing we were talking about early in the year, and now it's a different story. For the longest times he had no interceptions. Right. He is now tied for fourth with interceptions. He's tied. Sam Darnold leads away with 14. Ryan Fitzpatrick with 12. Jameis Winston with 11. And then the others with 10, Josh Rosen, Case Keenum, Andy Dalton, Ben Roethlisberger does as well, right, and Pat Mahomes. So now 37, you can live with that. It's kind of like the Rams' greatest show on turf back in the day. We'll get another one. We'll deal with it because we'll score again. But does that become a little bit of a worry to where, okay, first-year starter now coming into play a little bit from that side of it?
You know, the interesting thing there is, if you look at the numbers, his interceptions comes when he hangs onto the ball too long. Normally, it's pressure that dictates interceptions because the quarterbacks get flustered. You look at his numbers like under 3 seconds or over 3 seconds holding onto the ball. Most of his interceptions come when he's holding onto the ball too long and then tries to force something. And that is Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. All right, coming up, in a Points-A-Palooza game, did a defensive player make a case for being the MVP?
Did you know ADT can design and install a smart home just for you? A new smart home at your service, customized for your lifestyle. ADT professionals can even show you how to use your new smart home features. Now, that's what I call warm-up service. It's all controlled from the ADT app or the sound of your voice and backed by 24/7 protection. Visit ADT.com/smart to learn more about how ADT can help keep your home safe and smart.
Golic and Wingo brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. When a player doesn't like a contract, they hold out, right? With Straight Talk Wireless, you never have to because there is no contract. They use the same exact 4G LTE towers as the big carriers, but for a lot less. Straight Talk Wireless only at Walmart. Refer to terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
All right, Golic and Wingo with you on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. We want to hear from you, by the way, because that game completely lived up to, if not surpassed, the hype. Again, the over for that game was 64 points. It was the highest over, I think, ever on a Monday night game, or some ridiculous number, and it only beat it by 40-plus points. Yeah. I mean, it beat it by 40 points, the over. So we want to hear from you, 860-506-5505. What else has lived up to the hype like last night's game? And we'll play your voicemails throughout the day because we do want to hear from you. But I wanted to bring this up because Teddy Bruschi tweeted this during the game last night, and it sounds insane in a game in which there were 105 points, the first time in NFL history that two teams had scored 50, the first time ever that a team had scored 50 in the 99-year history of the league and lost. Did a defensive player make his case for being the MVP of the league? Aaron Donald last night had 2 sacks, both of them strip sacks, both of them 2 forced fumbles. As an interior defensive lineman, he now leads the league with 14.5 sacks. He also leads the league with 28 quarterback hits, and he also leads the league with 16 tackles for losses. And when Lawrence Taylor won the MVP in 1986, he had 20.5 sacks, including 16.5 in his team's first games. And right now, Aaron Donald, as not a rush end, as not a defensive end, right? What did Bill Cowher say to Greg Lloyd all those years ago? Rush the quarterback. He has more than that responsibility. He leads the league, and oh, by the way, he's double teamed almost 3/4 of the plays he's out there. So, as an interior lineman, Mike, as you know, that's the position you played, getting double teamed 75% of the time, he still leads the league in sacks, quarterback hits, and tackles for losses. Is he a legitimate MVP candidate?
The only comparison he and I have is after our names we had DT. After that, there's nothing similar.
You had 11 sacks in your career?
I had 11 and a half.
Thank you, sorry.
He has 3 more sacks in this year. And oh, by the way, all his sacks were from week 4 on. Week 4 on.
Ew.
Every one of them. By the way, he did get a first last night. He had not caused any fumbles until last night.
Caught up in a hurry.
And he did last night. Listen, I have seen I played with an incredible interior rusher. Now, Reggie White could have been, if he played on the interior all the time, would have been that, but Reggie played anywhere on the line he wanted to, which is why I think he was the greatest D lineman to ever play. But I played with a guy in the late, great Jerome Brown, who was a devastating defensive tackle. He got all the ball. He was one of those guys that made O-lineman nervous because he was an inch away from you because he got every inch of the ball. And his first step, I don't know if I saw a quicker one on the inside, but that's Aaron Donald. Warren Sapp was that way as well. You get these guys, it doesn't have to be the big road graders because those guys weren't. It's the quickness, it's the hand play, it's the constant movement. Mike, you know, you played guard and center, that you would much rather have a more of a still. Let's be honest. Of the two we're talking about there, Ndamukong Suh or Aaron Donald, pick one you want a one-on-one. It's going to be, I would imagine it's going to be Ndamukong Suh. Just try and stay low and stop his bull rush.
Well, look what people have done. I mean, Ndamukong Suh gets single blocked the majority of the time, and how often are we calling his name at this point? This is a guy that was brought in much more, I think, for what he offers you against the run, and so far what that's netted you at this point is minimal. But yeah, Aaron Donald's a nightmare. I mean, him and Khalil Mack, these guys that make splash defensive plays. For Kansas City, I mean, D Ford, was it Chris Jones, their defensive tackle last night? Another guy. Those are the guys you need, and I hope I'm giving credit to the right place. I think it was Daniel Jeremiah, who works at the NFL Network, that said this. If you're watching this game last night and you're a team that's looking to make personnel decisions, if you are drafting a run-stuffing defensive tackle in the first round, you are making a colossal mistake. Like, what do those guys do for you at this point?
All right, so
like Vita Vea from Washington
to Tampa,
to Tampa, who when he's been healthy is taking maybe 30-something snaps a game if you're lucky.
Danny Shelton that moved up to New England.
You need someone that's collapsing the pocket and tackling the running back on the way to the quarterback.
Which, by the way, Aaron Donald does that as well. Yeah. So let me ask you a question: where would he be right now in the 30 seconds we have left? Where would he be on your list of MVPs?
Well, he'd be in the top three, top five. I mean, I think it's Drew Brees. I think Drew Brees is the MVP of the league right now. Khalil Mack is on his way. You could have two defensive players in that discussion for the way they're playing this year.
I would put still Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes, and quite honestly, I would
Gurley.
Well, Gurley's value. If you're going by value,
I still think I'd put Phillip Rivers in the 3 spot. I think for what Phillip
even
Rivers
after what he did against the Broncos on Sunday.
Yeah, everyone makes a mistake.
Yeah, I get it. He might be in my top. He's definitely in my top 3, and I have to think long and hard about whether or not he'd be in my top 2 at this point. Coming up, the Big Maple to the Big Apple, and a top 10 matchup in my home away from home. Mahalo. Stay Wingo.
As a young boy, Gavin loved playing football. He lived and breathed it, wanted to go pro. Why, he'd spend hours upon hours just practicing his touchdown dances. And one day, while getting fitted for bifocals, he realized he was never much good at throwing, or running, or catching, or even kicking. Yeah, Gavin's chances of playing pro football were looking like 4th and long. Very long. But he did hear how Geico could save him money on car insurance, so he switched and saved. Then he did kind of a touchdown dance. At least he was still good at that.